Hi everyone, I'm Wendy. Welcome to SPERO DEI. I'm sure you've heard it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I have two, and I am so blessed that SPERO DEI has been part of mine. The three of us have received so much love and support from this non-judgmental community, and I'm grateful. So today I pray that you, wherever you are in life, you also feel loved and supported. Thank you.
Anxiety and through uncertainty, ever present with me in the waiting, faith and hesitating. I breathe you in, breathe you out. I breathe you in, breathe you out. And I'll remind my soul, you are always close, no matter where I go. I am not alone, I give up my control. To be still and know that the whole world you still hold, you hold it together. You hold it all together. Ever present, Christ all around me when my eyes fail to see. Ever present, you give brand new mercy for this brand new morning. I breathe you in, breathe you out. Yeah. And I'll remind my soul, you are always close, no matter where I go. I am not alone, I give up my control. To be still and know that the whole world you still hold, you hold it together. I breathe you in, breathe you out. 'Cause all that I need is here right now. In your presence I breathe you in, breathe you out. 'Cause all that I need is here right now. In your presence it's ever present. God, your presence is ever present. Yeah, God, your presence is ever present. God, your presence is ever present. Yeah. And I'll remind my soul, you are always close, no matter where I go. I am not together. You hold it all together.
Well, hey, SPERO Day, and I want to welcome you to our digital service today. And so I realize there's a number of you who watch us in person. You're actually sitting at SPERO Day in person. You live in Nashville, and so you're meeting live with us. I also realize there's a decent following watching somewhere else, some other city, some other place in the United States. And you watch us consistently online. And I just want to let you know that I consider you part of this congregation. If there is something about this church, the voice of this church, the way we speak about Christianity that is resonating with you, and SPERO Day is where you go to get that, you are part of this congregation. So what I would love is, my goodness, send me an email at david@SPERO Day. Let me know. Jot a comment in the YouTube comments or the Facebook comments or our IGTV comments. But SPERO Day is this new kind of church that meets in person in Nashville, Tennessee, and we also meet online digitally, which so many of you are part of. So whoever you are, wherever you are, welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, I know you know of the nation of Israel, but did you know that there is a person in the scriptures whose name was Israel? Did you know that? Well, sure. So let me tell you about him. And I want to share a part of his story, but to share a part of his story, I have to tell you a little of his backstory 20 years earlier. So Israel has an older brother named Esau. In fact, Israel was not his name for a lot of his life. He, in fact, is eventually named Israel at some point in his life. His original name, the name that his parents gave him, was Jacob. And so Esau and Jacob had two parents, Isaac and Rebekah, and the four of them together were an extremely dysfunctional family. In fact, the youngest son, Jacob, and the mother have this weird and unhealthy enmeshment relationship. They are attached in all the unhealthy ways. Now, back in those days, in a patriarchal society, the oldest son received the inheritance. That's how they did it back then. And so Esau is the normal and the rightful heir to Isaac and Rebekah's inheritance and legacy. But the mother, Rebekah, and the enmeshed son, Jacob, they won't have it. So in their unhealthiness, they planned a scheme that while Esau is out hunting one day, they are going to take advantage of the old man. Isaac is old, he barely can see, you might even guess he has some senility, he's not all quite there. And while the oldest son Esau is out hunting, Rebekah and Jacob trick the old man Isaac into giving all the inheritance to Jacob. And I guess in those days, at least in this story in the scriptures, they couldn't take it back. Today, if there was a mistake of identity or confusion, you could get lawyers involved and said that was a mistake. But in this scenario, once the birthright is given to Jacob, Isaac cannot take it back. And so, of course, when Esau realized the scheme that was done to him, not only is hurt, but he flies into a rage. He is so rageful, he says to Jacob, he says, "If I find you, I will kill you." And so that puts the younger son, Jacob, on the run, and he is on the run for 20 years. In fact, 14 of those 20 years, he hides out with this family who eventually becomes his in-laws. Now, fast forward 20 years later to the point of the story that I want to share with you of how Jacob then becomes Israel. Jacob is hiding out in the wilderness of Canaan, which is now the nation of Israel. And this rift is coming to such a climax that Esau knows where Jacob is. And in fact, the next morning, he is going to send 400 men. Folks, that is not a gang, that is an army. Jacob is so frightened that he sends all his children and all his wives. Again, that's how they did it then. He sends them away, and he awaits the next day of when he is now finally, after 20 years, going to have a conflict, potentially, with his brother, his vengeful brother, Esau. So let's pick up the story here in Genesis 32. Jacob got up during the night and took his 2 wives, his 2 women servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the Jabbok River's shallow water. He took them and everything that belonged to them, and he helped them cross the river. But Jacob stayed apart by himself, and a man wrestled with him until dawn broke. So suddenly there's this weird interjection in the story. It's like you're reading, okay, he's helping the women and children into the boat, so to speak. And suddenly out of nowhere comes this man. In fact, the Hebrew understanding, another word would be this ish, this mysterious person that suddenly Jacob has to wrestle with. When you think about it, it's kind of funny. Could you imagine, helping your family, and all of a sudden now you got to wrestle this mysterious man? When the man saw that he couldn't defeat Jacob, he grabbed Jacob's thigh and he tore a muscle in Jacob's thigh as he wrestled him. The man, or the ish, said, "Let me go because the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I won't let you go until you bless me." He said to Jacob, "What's your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name won't be Jacob any longer, but Israel, because you struggled with God and with men and won." Jacob also asked and said, "Tell me your name." But he said, "Why do you ask for my name?" And he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, because I have seen God face to face, and my life has been saved. The sun rose as Jacob passed Penuel, limping because of his thigh. And so there has been much written, much speculated, much studied about this passage as who this man is. And very concluded theological thought, especially in Christian retrospect, that this mysterious man, this Ish, was God or an angel of God. We don't really know, and for the point of this story, it doesn't really matter, because the point I'm trying to make is that Jacob gets a new name. His name is changed from Jacob, which means deceiver, by the way. I know Jacob is such a beautiful name, and some of you are maybe named Jacob, or you know somebody, or you named somebody Jacob, which is a beautiful name. So let's just stick with that. It's a beautiful name. But in this context, and in this antiquity, the name Jacob means deceiver, and that's exactly who he is. But here his name is changed. The Ish, the mysterious man, the angel of the Lord, whatever this interjection is, the story renames him Jacob and says, from now on, your name is Israel. Now, the word Israel, it basically means, its Hebrew understanding, Israel means struggle. It means to struggle. So Jacob, all his life, never had dealt with the truth of himself. He never dealt with his past. He had been a deceiver his whole life, and even up to this moment, finally on this night, he wrestles with the Ish, with this mysterious man. So this, in a sense, symbolizes, as God says, as he goes, I'm going to rename this place Peniel, which means I have seen the face of God and I'm alive. I'm still alive. So the name Israel, or in Hebrew, Yisrael, it means to struggle. It means to contend with. It means to wrestle. So that's what the Ish gives Jacob this name. You're no longer known as deceiver. You're now known as struggle, as wrestler. You wrestled with God and you won. So here's the point I'm trying to make. In Judaism, if you understand our Jewish roots, for a Jew, the name is Israel, or Yisrael, is so important to them because in the tradition of their faith, struggle is absolutely needed in their faith. You can't have genuine and true faith without struggle. And so from a Christian point of view, and certainly what I want to share with you today, struggle is a good thing. We need struggle in our faith. And if your faith doesn't experience struggle, it's going to lack the things to deepen it, widen it, and build it. And so this is a good lesson for us all, because sometimes when we come to a struggling place in our faith, we think we're doing it wrong, or we think something's not something that should be happening in our faith should be happening, because if the right things were happening in our faith, I wouldn't be struggling. And I want to tell you, no, you need to hold on to the ironic thought. Your faith, my faith, needs struggle. It's got to have struggle. And struggle is the foundation of the faith. And so whenever you and I are wrestling with God, wrestling with deep spirituality, wrestling with living a faith-filled life, wrestling with the point of it all, wrestling with the meaning of it all, even wrestling over the change and the evolvement of it all. If we're not wrestling, there is a vital part of our faith that's not happening. Your faith needs to wrestle. It needs to struggle. In fact, so much so that the Ish, the mysterious angel, the mysterious man in this story, says, I'm going to give you a new name. And the name is, you wrestled with God and won. And by won, it doesn't mean you're the victor. You, in a sense, pinned me to the ground. What it means is you endured it. You struggled. This is what's important. The struggling is the winning. So I just want to encourage us to know that struggle is a part of faith, and you actually need to struggle in your faith. And if your faith doesn't experience struggle, It's going to not experience the things that stretch it, bend it, strengthen it, feed it, grow it, widen it, deepen it, mature it, even evolve it, and even make it lasting. So don't get too discouraged that you struggle. It's part of it. The second thing I want to share with this story is struggle doesn't mean that your faith, that you're doing something wrong, nor does struggle mean that your faith is moving in a wrong direction. You know, one of the things that happened in 20th century Christianity, American Christianity, specifically Protestant conservative evangelical Christianity, we just stressed a faith that has an answer for everything. We just stressed Bible onlyism, not just Bible appreciation or Bible inspiration. Oh man, I'm way for that. But Bible onlyism, which is there's only one way to view it, and you have to view it very literally. So some of us, because of that, what was stressed with us with Bible onlyism is that the Bible only and always has the answer for everything. And there is an answer for everything. So what we did with 20th century Christian faith, evangelical faith, is we developed systematic theology. We developed a Bible that literally, hey man, we got an answer. Another word for that would be certainty. And so what a lot of us ended up inadvertently believing and thinking is that faith is belief, faith is a doctrine, as well as if faith is mature, it is gaining more and more answers. And when faith is immature, it's struggling with answers that they should know, or that they should hold to, or answers they should trust and not doubt. And what I'm saying is, no, that's not what this story teaches us. This story teaches us that not only is struggle needed, that we don't replace struggle with certainty. And so some of you think when you're very uncertain in your faith, you're doubting, you think that kind of struggle, you must be moving in the right direction, because the right direction is maturity, and maturity means you're trusting in and you have the answers. And I'm saying it doesn't seem what the example here is. And so I just want you to hold on to the fact that when you struggle, it may feel like the wrong direction, but it's not, because it's not a direction. Struggle is part of the needing. Struggle is part of the conditioning and the blessing. Struggle is part of the exercising and the enhancing. And the struggle may be that you find the answer through the wrestle, through the struggle. Here's the third thing I want to share what Israel means. Not only does it mean that struggle is needed, not only does it mean that struggle does not mean you're moving in the right direction. Struggle could be the absolute right direction for you to be in. Struggle is what produces your true self, your authentic self, your real self. Struggle is also what produces greater trust in God, and struggle is what also produces greater trust in yourself. So here's what happens. When you and I finally say, you know what, I'm going to deal with some real things in my life. I'm going to face some deep issues in my life. I'm going to deal with things in my relationships. I'm going to deal with things in my marriage. I'm going to deal with things in my spiritual life. I'm going to take on wrestling with something that really matters in my life. This is faith. That is the point of faith. When you are wrestling with deep theological things, when you are even faith-shifting things, and that's a wrestle. When you're even unsure you even want to hold on to the faith, that's a wrestle. That's a good wrestle. So when you are trying to figure out God and where God fits in your life, and you go through all the ebb and flow and you experience the wrestling, this is what leads us to become truly who we are. These are the pathways that awaken us to be who we are meant to be. This has been my experience. And you know what's interesting is when we meet Jacob for the first time, Jacob is a story of a man who is never comfortable with who he is. In fact, in the story from Genesis earlier, the 20 years earlier, when his own father asks, "Who are you?" in the father's confusion, in the father's old age, and he's confused which son is in front of him, when he turns to the real Jacob and he goes, "Who are you, my son?" Jacob goes, "Hi, Dad, I'm Esau." And so what the story of Jacob really is, this is a story of a man who was never comfortable with who he was. This is a man who was never secure with who he was. And the story of Jacob's whole arc is about a man who never became himself until this wrestling with this Ish. In fact, while the Ish and Jacob are wrestling, right in the middle of the match, the Ish, the mystery man, goes, "What's your name?" And that's the first time we see Jacob go, "I'm Jacob." Finally, Jacob comes to the end of himself. Finally, Jacob, the symbol here is fully open. And when Jacob is finally fully open with who he is, he now is able to take on a new name. And so he's finally comfortable with who he is and who he's become. And now that's the time for transition. So a struggling faith is the point of faith. It's part of faith. It's what grows faith. Struggle doesn't mean something's wrong. It doesn't mean a wrong direction. And it's only struggle that you become truly who you are meant to be. You know, a number of years ago, when the Chicago Cubs finally made it to the World Series, I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was away from Nashville, and I wanted to see the game. Liz and I, when we were young married, Liz and I started our lives living and pastoring in Chicago. So Chicago, Portillo's, stuffed pizza, Lou Malnati's, Italian beef, the Chicago Cubs. These are things that we've all, Michael Jordan, of course, these are things we've always loved. And so I was in this class in Cambridge, and I'm like, I have got to get out of here. So I sort of leave early, and I go across the street to where this pub is, where I know there's a bunch of televisions, and I walk in there to watch the game. And I'm standing there at the bar drinking a beer, watching the game, and I'm standing next to a guy who's also out of town, this really neat 30-something-year-old guy who is also from out of town. He was from New York City, but on his way to moving in Denver. We're watching the game, and as we're watching the game and rooting for Chicago, we strike up this amazing conversation about life and meaning, and it was just so wonderful watching this game, having this meaningful conversation with this sharp 30-something-year-old guy. And I'll never forget what he said to me, and I wrote it down here. This is what he said to me. He said, "David, I've always believed you got to have a place in your life where you are a beginner at something." And then he says, "This is what keeps me learning." And I remember hearing that going, yes, yes. A little side note, me and this guy are still friends. We still exchange. He has since gotten married. He now has a child. Yeah, he has a solar business in Colorado, and but I'll never forget what he said. He goes, "David, you got to keep things in your life where you are a beginner." So listen, struggle is part of faith. Struggle doesn't mean you're moving in a wrong direction at all. And when you and I can make sure we continue to introduce things in our lives where we are beginners, this is what keeps the struggle meaningful. This is what keeps healthy struggle in your life. And so some of you, when you go through a faith shift, because this thing you had no longer works for you, but now you're struggling with the shift, you're struggling with something new, that's a good thing. Now, is it an easy thing? I'm not saying it is. Is it a maddening thing? Oftentimes it is. Is it discombobulating? Well, of course it is, because what is shifting is something major, meaningful. But when you feel like something is just beginning, oh my gosh, this struggle is what's building your faith. This struggle is taking you on the road to being truly who you are and truly connected or reconnected to God in new ways. Even when you learn a new craft, you learn a new skill, what do? You struggle. When the pandemic hit and we had to go completely online, I suddenly had to become a filmmaker. I had to become a camera expert and a lighting expert and an editor and a director. And all in the span of weeks and over the year, of which I've done. And it's just been a wonderful experience. Has it been easy? No. When we're just feeling our way through the pandemic, when we're building this new, evolving church out of a pandemic in the middle of the Bible Belt, this is a struggle. But man, it is an exciting struggle. So are you keeping places in your life where you are a beginner? Are you keeping them? What do you need to change? What do you need to shift? One of them might first need to be your heart set, your mindset about struggle. Struggle is not everything wrong with your life. Struggle is a necessary part of life and faith, and maybe bringing you absolutely on the most right roads for you. Struggle is needed. And struggle is the very thing that will carry you to a deeper relationship with God and will allow you to awaken to who you truly are and who you need to be. So, are there some things that you can jog and weave and put into place where you are a beginner? Is it something theological? Is it something relational? Is it something deep you need to go after in your relationships? Something in your character? Something in your dependencies, something in your avoidances, something in your reactions, your unhealthy reactions? Do you need to shift something where you go, I have got to be a beginner in my life? Because when I'm a beginner, I struggle, and it's through this struggle that I come alive, I grow, and I strengthen, and I mature. So Jacob became Israel. When you see the name Israel, think of the nation of Israel. Think of Jewish history, that they relish struggle. This is such an important part of our Christianity and our evolving Christianity. So, wherever you're at, let's pray together, and maybe let's move into a time of attunement together. Let's pray. Just breathe. Settle into where you're at. And just begin to attune your affections to God. Just find that place in your heart where you open up that affectionate trust to God. And just be still in that in a moment. Now, is there something that's awakened in your mind and in your heart about struggle? Have you had a wrong attitude about it? Do you need to shift your attitude, that it's needed, that it's important? And then what about action? Do you need to move towards some sort of action to introduce where you can become a beginner? Do you need to go see a therapist? Do you need to address something in your love relationships? With your children, with your parents, with your spouse, with your partner, with your lover? Do you need to address something and go after something in your own life and dependencies, your own avoidances, or your own fearful reactions? God, thank you for the name Yisrael, Israel. Thank you that it means struggle. And thank you that the very foundation of our faith and what builds it, grows it, deepens it, holds it, keeps it, is struggle. It's healthy when we struggle. I pray for anybody who's struggling in their faith shift or their relationships, that you would be there with them. Let them know, like the Ish let Jacob know, that you are struggling and wrestling with God and you're winning, meaning the struggle is the winning. The getting through the struggle, that is the winning. This is what deepens us, strengthens us. This is what brings us and awakens us to who we really are. And I pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Anxious thoughts and fearful musings stoke my anger, fuel my hate. Dare I trust such deep compassion and open up to a love so great? Rise in me, oh risen one, overcome my fear and blindness. Lift me with your loving kindness, and I will shine like the sun. Rise in me, O risen one. There's a great line in the Richard Rohr book
the universal Christ. It says, resurrection is another word for change, particularly positive change, which we tend to see only in the long run. In the short run, change often looks like death. And as I lay down my defenses, masks I've worn and hid behind, take this false self I have fashioned, tear it down, Lord, let it die. Rise in me, O risen one, overcome my fear and blindness. Lift me with your loving kindness, and I will shine, shine like the sun. Rise in me, O risen one. Rise in me, O risen one.
Well, before we go, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are financially giving to SPERO DEI. You know, this is such a unique church with a unique voice. So the fact that a number of you are giving to it to support it, I'm just so grateful. I also want to tell you we need it. This kind of church with this kind of voice is so rare. And so the fact that you would be behind it helps keep it alive and helps to sustain it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you watch SPERO DEI, or you're part of our Nashville church, or maybe you're living in some other city, but SPERO DEI is, man, it's what connects you to the kind of voice of God that is meaningful to you. I will also say we need you. And if there is a way that you can begin donating, we need it, and it would really, really help. So it's really simple to give. You can go to SPERODEI.com, and you can give either through our website or you can give through our app. Both are secure and safe, just like Amazon, and easy and quick like Amazon. But from my heart to you, thank you so much.